People who know me well know that I love to be on the water, and my favorite spot on the boat is up at the prow, or on a catamaran, it's called the dolphin seat. I love to sit with my feet hanging over the edge, catching every wave. And the bigger the wave, the better. I'm never afraid. That's because I know that the captain is at the helm. He's studied the weather reports. He knows the nautical maps by heart, charting the hidden dangers and the safe harbors. He has his GPS to guide us safely to the next point. If I were to turn around and see the helm spinning wildly while the captain was sleeping, I wouldn't be having so much fun. The passage immediately before the one we heard today tells us that Jesus was teaching along the seashore. When the crowd grew so large, he got into a boat and began to preach from there. When evening came, he suggested they cross to the other side, possibly to get away from the crushing crowd and get some rest. The Sea of Galilee is surrounded by mountains, and as we Coloradoans know, storms can come out of nowhere with no warning in the hills. The apostles were seasoned fishermen. They lived their lives on the Sea of Galilee. They had weathered many storms before the account we read today. Unlike today's sailors, they had no life jackets, lifeboats, or a radio to call for help. They probably knew many fellow fishermen who had gone to watery graves in violent storms. They had good reason to be afraid. So why did they call upon Jesus? He was a carpenter, just along for the ride. The account says he was asleep on a cushion in the back of the boat. The stern is where the rudder is, and the person at the back of the boat is expected to be steering the craft. I can just picture Jesus soundly snoozing as the disciples are frantically trying to keep a course towards shore. Was Jesus on his comfy cushion impeding the man who was trying to get to the rudder? Or were the apostles just amazed that anyone could sleep through such a violent storm when they woke Jesus with their question, "Do you not care that we are perishing?" They had seen Jesus perform miracles, so maybe they were wondering why he wasn't doing something for them. It seems all they had to do was ask, and Jesus calmed the storm. Jesus had just that day told the parable of the sower and the seed that falls on rocky ground. Those without deep roots fall away when the going gets tough. Were the disciples' roots not deep enough? Had they fallen into a panic because they didn't trust Jesus to save them? Only after they were assured of their safety did he rebuke them. He didn't say, "You had nothing to fear." He said, "Why are you afraid? Have you no faith?" There was a big difference between having something to fear and being afraid. I doubt any of us have ever been in a storm in the middle of the Sea of Galilee, but we have all been in that boat, frightened when things seem out of control, feeling ourselves being tossed in the waves with no hope of a lifeboat. Who do we call on when we are in a crisis? Do we know if someone is steering the boat, or do we feel lost at sea? There's a popular saying that faith won't take you out of the storm, but will get you through it. Jesus didn't say, "A storm is coming, let's stay ashore where there is no danger." He said, "We need to get to the other side." But when the storm came up, all the disciples had to do was call on him, and he calmed the wind and the waves. They went from a violent storm to a smooth and placid sea. It's not always easy to trust God. I'm an innate worrier. My first reaction to the storms of life is panic. Stuart can attest to that. I can think of more ways things can go wrong than a Hollywood scriptwriter. My response sometimes comes much later. Only after I've tried to still the storm myself do I remember to call out to God. It's not always easy to let go of the worry and fear. I'm very good at handing it over to God and then snatching it back. It's sometimes hard to remember that I am not in charge, and worry won't change a thing. But when you're feeling battered and without hope, and you call out to God, He will give you that peace that passes all understanding, even when your world seems to be falling apart. One detail often missed in this passage is that the apostles were not the only boat on the sea that day. Other boats were with them. When the men in the boat called upon Jesus, the seas were calmed for those around in other boats too. Today, your boat may be riding the big rolling waves and you may have your feet hanging over the prow. Someone else may be in a boat that has been knocked off course and is taking on water. Or there may be a time when your boat has been broken apart and you're clinging to a bit of driftwood. It's important to have people around you who can call out to God to calm your storm, to come alongside and offer you a life preserver. Having Christian companions can help you get through the storm when you're just holding on for dear life. Many years ago, I was very sick and in the hospital. The doctor had ordered a special procedure where the radiologist could see in real time what was happening. That was a Tuesday evening at 6 o'clock. After the procedure was completed, the doctor told me that he had watched the problem resolve on its own. The next morning, Father Jack came to visit me. He mentioned that there had been a vestry meeting the night before. The vestry always meets to pray around the altar before they begin their business. That night, they had prayed for me at 6 o'clock. I hope that you have experienced that kind of calm in the storms of your life. There's no way to avoid all the storms that come your way. You may not experience the dramatic turnaround that the apostles had or that I experienced, but God will give you shelter. In this story, we're told that the boat was taking on water. We're not told that that changed after the storm was stilled. The apostles still had work to do bailing out the boat, but they were no longer fearing for their lives. God may not take away the pain or sorrow, but He will tell you, do not be afraid, I am still at the helm. I'd like to close with this prayer from Bishop Stephen Charleston. Spirit, watch over us, please. We are feeling a little anxious, a little uncertain, as if something was hanging over us, something beyond our control. Give us your confidence, Spirit. Let us feel your presence among us. For when you are by our side, fear cannot be found. Amen.